Welcome to One Bite is Everything, the podcast that uncovers what you don't know about your food. I'm your host, Dana DePrima, and today we're taking a look at a moment in American food policy, the nomination of Brooke Rollins as the next Secretary of Agriculture for the U.S. Department of Agriculture under the incoming administration. Rollins is the final agency head appointment in advance of Donald Trump taking office in January. Last week, we heard from regenerative farmer and agricultural provocateur Joel Salatin. Joel and a handful of others have been tapped as a possible advisor to the new Secretary of Agriculture, a move that has homesteaders and small farmers in particular full of hope that small farming would find itself in the new administration less confined by agricultural regulation, including but not limited to the sale of raw milk and the processing of meat, particularly beef, pork, and lamb. Salatin also has a bold perspective that the USDA shouldn't even exist. If you missed that episode, it is a must listen. It's full of the kind of radical thinking that makes you question everything you thought you knew about food and farming in this country. Now we turn our focus to Brooke Rollins, her nomination, and what her leadership could mean for hardworking farmers, consumers, and the food insecure. Just a note on the latter part of this equation. The USDA and the Farm Bill link the production of food with the access to food by those who have limited resources. In fact, SNAP, the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, is typically 80% or more of the Farm Bill's budget. Will Brooke Rollins' policies move the needle on agricultural sustainability and food access, or will they prioritize a different agenda altogether? Let's take a look. Let's start with a little background. Rollins was raised in Glen Rose, Texas, a small agriculture-centered town about 1.5 hours outside of Dallas. As a child, Rollins was actively involved in agricultural youth organizations such as Future Farmers of America, or FFA, and 4-H. She graduated cum laude from Texas A&M University in 1994 with a Bachelor of Science in Agricultural Development and went on to law school at the University of Texas. Rollins comes from a generational farming family, providing her with firsthand experience in agricultural practices. Her 4 children have also been involved in agriculture, showing their cattle in competitions. Brooke Rollins is no stranger to politics. As a Texas native, she served as the CEO of the Texas Public Policy Foundation, a conservative think tank, before joining the Trump administration as the director of Domestic Policy Council. She's known for championing issues like criminal justice reform, economic opportunity zones, and deregulation. Let's get into a few specifics. During her tenure in the first Trump administration, Rollins was involved in the development and passage of the First Step Act, a bipartisan criminal justice reform bill aimed at reducing recidivism and reforming sentencing laws. This legislation was a significant step toward overhauling the federal prison system and providing inmates with better opportunities for rehabilitation. Rollins also promoted Opportunity Zones, a program established by the 2017 Tax Cuts and Jobs Act to encourage investment in economically distressed communities. These zones offer tax incentives to investors aiming to spur economic growth and job creation in underserved areas. Rollins highlighted the program's success, noting that it attracted $75 billion in capital investments by the end of 2019, with $52 billion flowing into communities that otherwise might not have received such investments. As part of the Office of American Innovation, Rollins advocated for reducing federal regulations to stimulate economic growth. She supported initiatives aimed at cutting red tape, believing that deregulation would unleash the economy's, quote, animal spirits and foster a more business-friendly environment. In May 2020, President Trump appointed Rollins as acting director of the United States Domestic Policy Council, where she oversaw the administration's domestic policy agenda. Following the 2020 presidential election, Rollins co-founded the America First Policy Institute, or AFPI, in 2021, serving as its president and CEO. AFPI is a conservative nonprofit think tank which advocates for a set of principles and goals aimed at prioritizing American interests in domestic and foreign policies. The agenda focuses on themes of economic growth, national sovereignty, and individual freedom. Key elements of the AFPI agenda include reducing taxes and regulations, using domestic energy resources, building physical and technological border barriers, reassessing international trade structures, replacing the Affordable Care Act, advocating for charter schools or voucher programs, limiting curriculum to exclude critical race theories, and promoting policies that align with family values. There is a ton to unpack there, but we're not going to get into that today. Let's take a look at how, if confirmed, as the next Secretary of Agriculture, Rollins might impact how the role of the USDA is changed under the new administration. Just to reiterate, Rollins, if confirmed by the Senate, will lead a department responsible for a wide range of programs, including farm and nutrition initiatives, food safety, and rural development. With a track record of dismantling bureaucracy in favor of market-driven outcomes, Rollins' approach could have big implications for American farmers and food systems. When considering who to nominate for Ag Secretary, we saw a mix of familiar figures, including Congressman David Scott, who chairs the House Agriculture Committee, and economist Darren Qualman, known for his work on sustainable food systems. Rollins' nomination signals a clear ideological shift, one that seems to align with the administration's broader focus on deregulation and economic growth. What does this mean for farmers? Likely a continuation of policies that favor large-scale industrial farming over smaller operations, unless she's persuaded by voices like Joel Salatin's to rethink the entire framework. Now, let's look ahead. What can we expect Brooke Rollins to support and perhaps dismantle once she's in office? Here are 3 areas to watch. First, deregulation. Rollins is likely to push for reduced oversight in agriculture, which could ease the burden on big agribusinesses, but make life harder for small-scale farmers trying to compete. Deregulation might also impact food safety standards and environmental protections. Second, food insecurity programs. This is where things get tricky. Rollins has championed opportunity zones and economic empowerment in the past, but her approach to direct aid, like SNAP, the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, remains unclear. Advocates for the food insecure are already voicing concerns about potential cuts to these lifeline programs. Third, innovation and technology. On the flip side, Rollins may advocate for public-private partnerships to bring more innovation to agriculture, like precision farming and biotech solutions. This could boost productivity but might further consolidate power with a handful of corporations. And then there's that wild card, Joel Salatin. With his radical ideas about decentralizing food systems, it will be fascinating to see how, or if, his influence shifts Rollins' priorities. Let's not forget the human impact here. Policies like these aren't just political decisions, they ripple into the lives of hardworking farmers and millions of food-insecure families. For farmers, these decisions can mean the difference between thriving and barely scraping by. And for those struggling to put food on the table, they determine whether our safety nets are strong enough or full of holes. Let's look at this through another lens. Brooke Rollins' leadership at the America First Policy Institute, AFPI, will likely influence her approach as a Secretary of Agriculture by emphasizing key principles and priorities consistent with the America First agenda. Here's how her AFPI background might shape her tenure. Rollins' AFPI experience aligns with policies that prioritize American industries. As Agriculture Secretary, she is likely to emphasize supporting domestic farmers and ranchers, ensuring U.S. agriculture remains competitive globally and self-sufficient domestically. Policies may include increasing federal support for rural development, infrastructure, and access to markets, as well as reducing reliance on foreign food imports. At AFPI, Rollins advocated for reducing government regulations to stimulate economic growth. As Ag Secretary, she could pursue a similar approach, seeking to ease regulatory burdens on farmers and agribusinesses, including environmental and labor regulations. She might also work to streamline USDA programs to make them more efficient and accessible for small and medium-sized farmers. AFPI places significant emphasis on empowering underserved and rural communities. Rollins' tenure might focus on improving the quality of life in rural areas through investments in broadband internet, healthcare access, and rural education. Expect programs that highlight the role of agriculture in revitalizing rural economies. With AFPI's emphasis on energy independence, Rollins could integrate energy priorities into agriculture by expanding biofuel initiatives, for example, ethanol and biodiesel production relating to corn production, and supporting renewable energy projects on farms. Following AFPI's America First trade principles, Rollins is likely to advocate for trade agreements that protect American farmers from unfair competition and reduce dependency on foreign markets. She may push for tariffs or other trade measures to safeguard U.S. agriculture while promoting exports. AFPI emphasizes innovation as a driver of economic growth. Rollins may champion agricultural technologies such as precision farming, sustainable practices, and genetic advancements to increase productivity while addressing environmental concerns. Drawing from AFPI's focus on traditional values, Rollins might highlight family farming, generational land ownership, and agriculture's role in cultural heritage. She may advocate for agricultural education in schools and programs to inspire younger generations to pursue farming careers. AFPI frequently emphasizes the role of private sector collaboration. Rollins might expand USDA partnerships with corporations and nonprofits to drive agricultural development and innovation. Rollins' leadership in promoting the First Step Act at AFPI indicates she values bipartisan and practical solutions. She may seek to build coalitions across political divides to pass meaningful agricultural reforms. On the flip side of all of this possible action, potential critiques include environmental concerns, perceptions of favoritism, and issues with trade wars. Critics may argue that her deregulatory stance could compromise environmental protections, particularly related to climate change and sustainability. One area that shouldn't be overlooked is the global impact of Rollins' potential policies. With an America First approach, we could see trade shifts, particularly in key exports like soybeans, corn, and beef. Trade measures could strengthen protections for American farmers, but also risk retaliatory tariffs, impacting exports and farm incomes. Historically, similar policies under previous administrations led to tensions with trading partners, including China and the EU. Another critical area to watch is environmental sustainability. Deregulation could potentially ease farmers' operations, but also raise concerns about soil health, water safety, and climate impacts. Rollins may support biofuel projects or renewable energy on farms, but will it come at the expense of strong environmental safeguards? Climate-conscious farmers may feel caught in a policy tug-of-war. Another area that Rollins may emphasize is agricultural technology. Precision farming, AI-driven crop management, and biotech solutions could see a boost under her leadership. While these innovations promise increased productivity and efficiency, they also raise questions about accessibility for smaller farms and the consolidation of power among large agri-tech corporations. Like I said, there is a lot to unpack here and a lot of reading between the lines before she takes office, if she is indeed confirmed. That's all for today's episode. If you have questions about Brooke Rollins' nomination, or if there's something you'd like me to cover in a future episode, send me a note. I'd love to hear from you. And don't forget to subscribe to One Bite is Everything so you never miss an episode. Before we wrap up, I encourage you to get involved. Whether it's reaching out to your representatives to advocate for fair farm policies, supporting local farmers in your area, or joining conversations about food security, every action makes a difference. You can support your own farmers locally by shopping with them regularly, or get involved in the For Farmers movement that takes local action to the national stage with programs like Grants and Gratitude that impact farmers everywhere. Together, we can shape a more equitable and sustainable food system. We will continue to unpack more about the future of food and agricultural policy under this new administration. Come January, we will be able to focus more on action and less on speculation. I am your host, Dana DePrima. See you here next week for another episode of One Bite is Everything. Until then, keep being curious about the future of your food. It's that one bite that's literally connected to everything.